Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we've got another weekend of pretty stormy conditions. No named storm for the next couple of days, but we have got various yellow warnings that have been issued up and down the country, again for rain, snow and strong winds. We'll be able to have a look at that in detail from the latest UKV, which we'll be able to cover this weekend's, as I said, very stormy weather in places. And of course, we'll be able to see what the first few days of January have in store. And unfortunately, it is looking like it's going to remain fairly unsettled, but is slowly turning cooler, or if not, a little bit colder. As we progress into the longer range, of course, it is looking incredibly interesting still as we progress into January. And the main three models that we look at today are all showing a cold or very cold pattern as we progress into January. Nothing imminently, more around that 7 to 10 day time frame, but there is definitely more of a consensus of a cooler or colder pattern setting up. Still a lot of uncertainty in the longer range in terms of intensity and longevity of any colder spell, but by pretty much every day now, the confidence is slowly growing that this colder pattern that we've been looking at for the past few days, and the past probably sort of week in general, is looking more and more likely. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now if you start on the live radar, you can see it's actually a pretty unsettled day once again. We knew there was going to be quite a few showers around through this afternoon, but they didn't look as beefy as this on the shorter range runs. In reality, we've got some much bigger and much more intense showers than we anticipated. You can see through much of England and Wales, we've got lots of squally showers, especially for parts of the Midlands and northwest England. We had some heavier rain further south and eastwards, but much of that's now cleared out into the North Sea. But you can see where we've got these darker greens, yellows and oranges, that's where we've got some really quite heavy rain, still got gusty winds. So when these showers come through, even though they will move through pretty quickly, it could be really quite squally out there. Further north, we've got a more persistent band of precipitation that's slowly edging southwards, a bit of a cold front, as we've got cold air developing behind it. Nothing crazy, but much colder than it's been further southwards. And you can see along this weather front, we've got a bit of snow over the highest ground, but mostly again some pretty heavy rain. And then to the north of that weather front, we've got showers packing into Scotland with a bit of a northerly wind on the back edge of the low pressure system. And you can see again, showers turning wintry. So if we do have a look at those temperatures, it is going to be a pretty big split. Again, further south and eastwards, it is pretty mild. Again, nothing crazy. Temperatures around average or slightly above average. And further northwards, it's around average or slightly below average, with more of those lighter blues indicating low single digits, if not getting much above freezing over the higher ground of Scotland. And that does look like the continual pattern over the coming days. There definitely will be milder air masses moving in, but the overall trend into January is a downwards trend in temperatures, more towards average to below average temperatures most of the time. And potentially, as I said, pretty potent cold weather could be arriving as we progress into the first week or two of January. Now, if you do look at the weather warnings, we've got a whole array of warnings that have been issued this morning for the weekend. Again, another really quite big storm system moving in. As I said, it's not been named yet. There is a risk it could be named later. But at this stage, we've just got another widespread array of yellow warnings. Again, warnings issued in similar spots for Storm Barrett a few days ago. Again, we got a widespread yellow wind warning issued for much of southern England and Wales, again from 11 a.m. until 3 a.m. on Sunday. A spell of strong and gusty winds will move eastwards across England and Wales, bringing disruption to travel and services. Again, we're looking at 45 to 50 miles per hour widely within this zone, but within the squally cold front that we'll see, could see gusts around 60 miles per hour, maybe even 65 to 75 miles per hour. Medium likelihood, lower end of the impact matrix. We've got a rain warning issued for much of Wales from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. Again, 20 to 30 millimetres widely, as much to 40 to 50 millimetres in the northwest of the region. A rain warning for Northern Ireland from 4 a.m. until 11 a.m. Again, with the weather front moving in, could see 15 to 25 millimetres. And again, could be some flooding as it's falling onto already saturated ground. We've got a rain and snow warning issued here for sort of the Scottish borders area towards northern England. A period of sleet and snow turning to rain on Saturday may lead to some flooding and travel disruption. So it's very similar to the storm we saw earlier this week, Storm Babet, where we will see snow on its leading edge, especially over the higher ground, but it will mostly turn to rain as we progress through the day. So it is following a very similar track. And you can see again, could be a few centimetres over 250 to 300 metres, but then it will turn back to rain, accumulating maybe 15 to 25 millimetres, maybe 30 to 40 millimetres possible in a few areas, again expiring at 3 p.m. And then we've got a larger rain and snow warning issued for much of Scotland, really excluding the far south of Scotland and the far west and sort of northern coastal areas. Of course, as soon as you get towards the coast, those temperatures start to nudge up, and that does decrease the risk of snow. And then, of course, higher ground makes heavier rain with the orographic rainfall. That's why the coastal areas have been excluded a bit, but most of Scotland is included in this. And it's a period of sleet and snow turning to rain again, bringing disruption during Saturday. Again, we could see 5 to 10 centimetres above 250 to 300 metres. Over low-lying areas, could see a couple of centimetres early in the day, but then it will mostly turn to rain, where we'll see 15 to 25 millimetres. So a lot of rain falling quite widely. And again, with that mix of rain, sleet and snow, it could make a whole array of mixed conditions. You could wake up to a couple of inches of snow in the morning, and by the afternoon, there could be large amounts of flooding. So again, another pretty disruptive day on Saturday. As we progress to Sunday, though, still got this widespread wind warning issued, but really, as we saw, only goes to the early hours of the morning, so most of Sunday things should start to die down. And at this stage, no warnings issued for the start of 2024, but as we see from the latest UKV, there is the risk of seeing some warnings, probably not anywhere near as stormy as we're seeing tomorrow, but nonetheless still could be disruptive in places. So if we do have a look at the latest UKV, you can see through this afternoon those showers continuing, but you can see here on the UKV, they don't look too beefy at all, but in reality, they're a lot larger and a lot more intense than the model is making out to be. So that's why sometimes it's best to look at the live radar instead of some of these short range models, especially for showery conditions, as in reality, it is being a lot more intense than we anticipated. Through this evening, though, the showers should slowly die out. But that's because we're seeing a brief ridge of high pressure before the weather system for tomorrow moves in. And you see initially some very heavy rain moving in. Again, doesn't look like it's going to be a huge area of rain, but it's going to be very intense when it does move through. And you can see the squall line developing within the cold front, especially for England and Wales. You can see this narrow band of orange and reds. That is a squall front. Line convection, whatever you want to call it, along the cold front, where we have got a very narrow band of extremely heavy rain, potentially even some thunderstorms developing within that, and some very strong squally winds. It's like right on the barrier, on the boundary between the cold air coming in with the mild air getting swept away. And as I said, along that, it could be very intense indeed. And when it does move through, you will know about it, especially if you are outdoors. Now, for western areas, it will move through the middle to latter part of the afternoon. Eastern areas, early evening to perhaps the latter part of the evening, as it does shift through East Anglia in the southeast. It looks like it's going to hold its form all the way through the evening, and it does look like it slows a bit, especially towards the latter part of the evening, so it could be very intense in those eastern areas. Further westwards and northwards, the weather front does clear, and then we see a whole array of showers, milder areas pushing in within this initially, and then the cold air moves back in behind the cold front. So we could see these showers turn to snow over higher ground of Scotland, but again, most areas still rain, as it's not particularly cold air moving in, but it's colder than we had prior. As we progress through the rest of Sunday, showers around still, and again, could be pretty beefy in places, but not expecting anything too crazy. And then as we progress into Monday, the first day of January, again, generally turning slightly drier before we see more rain potentially moving in from the southwest as we head into the first few days of January. Again, another low pressure system, and it could give reasonably widespread rain as we head through the first few days of January. But of course, we'll keep you updated on that, as it still is relatively uncertain, as we are seeing some southerly tracking low pressure systems, and they are statistically and historically pretty hard to pinpoint outside of the sort of 2 or 3 day time frame. Now, if you look at the latest wind gusts, you can see it's still pretty gusty today, but winds will slowly die down through this evening before picking up around tomorrow morning, where we'll see again along that cold front 50, 60 or even 70 miles per hour. And that will continue through much of Saturday before slowly dying down into Sunday, but still remaining fairly strong, especially further westwards, even through Sunday. Could see another wind warning issue for the southwest of England there. That definitely looks like a real possibility. And then eventually, as we progress into Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, still could see some gusty winds around, but it doesn't look anywhere near as strong as the days prior. If you look at the max temperatures, again, you can see today it is average to above average in the south, around 8 to 10 degrees, below average further northwards, around the low single digits, or even colder than that. Overnight tonight could be a frost in the north, but as the weather front arrives, it will turn it slightly milder, especially for low-lying areas, and again, could see 10 to 12 degrees. But that is just a wedge of milder air. Once the cold front sweeps through, it will turn us all colder once again, and then as we head into Sunday, much fresher, all around that 6 to 8 degree mark. As we progress into Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, you can all see generally we are cooling down 5 to 7 degrees widely on Monday. Tuesday could be milder in the south, but much colder in the north. And you can just generally see it is turning a lot chillier than it has been recently. And that is setting the trend as we do progress into the start of 2024. Now, if you look at the anticipated longer range, it is continuing to look particularly cold as we progress into January. Again, yesterday we saw the GFS back off from those colder patterns. It has strengthened those colder patterns again today, but not quite to the extent it was a couple of days ago. So it looks like it was quite a strong signal. It backed off significantly, and now it's slowly coming back again. Both the GM and the ECMWF are very much on board with the colder pattern, so perhaps it's just the GFS doing its pretty typical up and down in terms of predicting a weather pattern. Sometimes the GFS is correct, and you say it's done a good job. Other times, which I suspect, but I can't guarantee, is like this time, where it is correct some of the time, but then has some big wobbles that are not particularly warranted. Whereas the ECMWF a couple of days ago was much more was backing off quite a lot and was quite moderate, but then the last day or two has come on quite strongly. And is showing definitely quite a strong signal for cold weather into January. Now, I can see over the coming days we continue to see westerly winds. That is looking guaranteed, basically. Going to look very unsettled. But as we progress into early January, you can see the jet stream pushed much further south. It's roughly where this black line is, divider, between cooler, low pressure to our north, higher pressure towards the tropics and the equator. You can see generally where that's pushing, that is much further southwards than it's been recently, and that will basically mean colder air masses are further southwards, and the low pressure systems are further southwards as well. And that is why, as we saw on the UKV, more of that precipitation was across the south as we progress into next week, because the jet stream with the track of low pressure systems is further southwards. It does allow colder air to move in, and you can generally see the jet stream stays further southwards. And it's as we develop into sort of the day 8, day 9 time frame, that's where we could see a big ridge of high pressure develop to our north and our west. And the latest GFS does something really interesting here. It builds a high pressure system, but it's just to our west. So it's not further enough north and far enough west to put in a bitterly cold, snowy, easterly or northerly wind, but it's far enough northwards and westwards to bring in a very cold air mass, but still keep us under the higher pressure. So if we do run through this, you can see the high pressure pretty much goes nowhere all the way to the end of the run and kind of sits over the top of us or just to our west, pulling in a persistent northeasterly wind for about a week. But if I put on the air masses, you can see cold air moves in, and we just get these bouts of very cold air getting pushed in from the east. And it essentially means we will be very cold, bit of winteriness, but nothing too crazy. It'd be frigid, frozen, but relatively dry. Very interesting from the GFS. Again, I doubt it will play out exactly like this. This is very, very sort of stuck on a knife edge. The high pressures further northwards and westwards, it would be pretty wintry. Further south and eastwards, it would probably start to get ridden over by low pressure systems, and that could mix in milder air masses, decaying weather fronts, things like that, which would complicate it quite significantly. So I doubt it will stay exactly like this, but it's definitely back towards colder patterns which had backed off significantly from yesterday. Again, you can have a look at the potential equivalent temperature. You can see there is a massive pool of very cold air to our east. So if that high pressure did nudge ever so slightly northwards or westwards and did pull in a pretty strong easterly or northerly, at least for a couple of days, we would tap into some bitterly cold air. And again, if we have a look at the surface temperatures here, you can see it is pretty cold indeed, widely below freezing overnight, for many of these days, and the dew points as well are pretty freezing as well. So if we did see some precipitation associated with this, it most likely would fall as snow. So GFS back on board with the colder pattern. As we'll see from the ensembles, not all ensemble members are back on board, but definitely I've seen a colder shift again today. Now, both the GM and the East WF are showing a similar pattern towards the daytime period, but they're perhaps slightly colder and slightly more wintry. Very interestingly, the GM and the East WF are almost a carbon copy for what they're showing this morning. Now, if we do have a look at the westerly flow over the coming days, see the jet stream pushes southwards, and then very similar to the GFS, in around a week's time, we see this ridge of high pressure to our north and our west, and you can see it's more towards Greenland, and what this means at day 10 is we're pulling in a pretty potent northerly or northeasterly wind. Again, this is just getting going, so if you have a look at the air masses, you can see the very cold air hasn't quite reached us yet, but most likely the -5 isotherm will move in for all, and the -10 isotherm would flirt with the north and the east. Of course, it's highly unlikely from this wind direction we'd be able to get the -10 isotherm in, or anything colder than that, simply because of the long sea track, but still that very cold Arctic air would be moving in with this scenario. So, GM, cold, potentially even very cold if we were able to run this on another couple of days. The ECMWF, as I said, is pretty much a carbon copy into the longer term. Again, westerly winds continuing, southerly tracking jets, and then as we head towards day 7, we build that Atlantic ridge, developing further northwards, and then look what happens, we pull in another northeasterly wind. Again, it's not exactly the same, but it is very similar. High pressure up towards Iceland, ridging towards Greenland, and we're seeing a very strong northeasterly wind. Cold air getting wrapped within this. Initially, probably for southern areas, this would be mainly rain, simply because the air mass isn't quite cold enough yet, but you can see where the wind direction is coming from. We could put the 850 HPA streamlines on, and you follow these arrows back, you see they're coming straight from the Arctic and from Svalbard, so it is bitterly cold air moving in. And for northern areas, Scotland specifically here, we would be seeing lots of heavy snow showers, even at this point, and as we progress across the next few days, most likely would develop elsewhere. So both the GM and the ECMWF on the cusp of a very cold pattern at day 10, or at least the very cold pattern has developed, so they're on the cusp of very cold air moving in. So very interesting from all three models, showing something pretty similar around the day 10 point. Again, slightly different with their exact air masses, exact wind direction, exact strength of low pressure, high pressure, but all broadly very similar. Now, if we do have a look at the ensembles, you can see the latest GFS are definitely trending colder, but not quite as bullish as it was a couple of days ago, and still relatively uncertain. You can see this longer range pretty much beyond the first couple of days of January, we are average to well below average all the way through the first couple of weeks, with some very cold runs that do include the GFS operational run. It's not a complete outlier, but it's not, I would say, within sort of the range of the majority of ensemble members, or quite a few are around average or slightly below average, with lots of up and down. So you can see the GFS ensembles are pretty much all over the place, but definitely a slightly cooler trend today. And again, we'll just have to keep an eye on it over the next 24 hours, because hopefully we'll actually see some consistency and it will go along with what other runs are showing. Again, the 2 meter temperatures, regardless of the ensemble member, they're generally on the downwards trend towards the mid-single digits, at least average to below average in the next week or two, and potentially very cold. And if we do have a look at some of the other ensemble members, I just want to have a look at the GM. We don't normally look at it because it hasn't got as many ensemble members. You can see it's only got 20, so it doesn't always give us the best indication, but you can see even the GM here with only 20 ensemble members. As we head into the first week or two of January, definitely a big shift with these colder runs. And then if we have a look at the ECMWF, which did trend quite a bit colder yesterday, and again is very cold today. A lot more bullish with its cold weather than the GFS, and continuing the trend. Quite a few runs, especially for southern areas, are just cold, not very cold. I'd categorise very cold as getting down towards the -10 level. Only maybe a minority, maybe 20% get down to that very cold level, but regardless, still many down towards that -6 to -8 range, which is comfortably cold enough for seeing widespread winteriness. So Eastern UF definitely on board once again this morning, or with this morning's runs, for another very cold pattern to develop. So it is continuing to look incredibly interesting as we head into early 2024. We can have to keep a very close eye on it. I do think we'll see more wobbles within the models. We'll see lots of up and downs, but for the time being, still does look pretty likely that we do see something cold and potentially very cold, but that still, as I said, has got some uncertainty within the models. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to stay safe over the coming days with the continuous stormy weather. And if you're looking for something colder, 2024 definitely looks like it will start on a cool note, potentially even a very cold and wintry note. So as I said, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.